first of all, people have to understand that the Chicago Public League dates back to the late 1800s. I mean, very few conferences or communities in this country outside of New York City and Chicago have had a competition among their city public schools for as long as Chicago has. So when you start back in the 1800s, there are the old time schools that still exist, like Englewood and Hyde Park, that were winning championships and state championships. And of course, there were very many fewer schools, obviously, as there were the suburbs as we know it didn't exist, obviously, in those years. And it was mainly the public schools and the Catholic schools in the city of Chicago. And that kind of competition continued up through the 40s and 50s and on into the 60s, when the suburban schools began to take shape.
You know, the inner city is no different than a lot of other places in terms of if you have both parents at home and it's a healthy environment, I think you have a lot better chance of succeeding. Try to take a straight line approach to it and be sympathetic toward, people have the reasons for doing what they do, and trying to understand that and be sympathetic toward that is important in covering high school athletics. I mean, we're dealing with kids here. At the end of the day, we have to remember that. On a kid, we hear things, and it's not always black and white in terms of, well, they broke the rules, so they're bad people, or people have the reasons for doing what they do, and trying to understand that and be sympathetic toward that is important in covering high school athletics. I mean, we're dealing with kids here. At the end of the day, we have to remember that. You take a Jabari Parker who's scrutinized from every corner of the country, and he's equipped to handle it. Well, not all kids are. So far, he's equipped to handle it. I think, I've covered kids who went on to NBA stardom who weren't equipped to handle it, who did come from good families. I've covered kids that have come from bad places that are in terrific places now and probably always will be. So I think it's the parental aspect is certainly important, but I don't think it's specific to the inner city necessarily. I think that's everywhere. I mean,
there's so many things that they lack, but I still go back to the idea, I don't know that, kids played under those restrictions before. We've always produced great football players. Russell Maryland came out of Whitney Young and was a #1 draft choice. We've had outstanding athletes who have made the sacrifice to do with less and do more with less, basically.